Hey guys, this is Eric from Weingarten with Weingarten Racing. Even though it's Saturday, I thought I'd do, and usually I do an update video on Saturday, I thought I'd do a different video this Saturday just because it's kind of Memorial Day weekend. So I'm just going to give you some good stuff because I may not do a video tomorrow because, be busy and stuff, and you guys might be too busy to watch anyway, so here we go. This is what's upcoming for the small block dyno mule, and there's a lot of stuff here in this picture, or in this video, that will kind of go over some of the stuff. What's going to happen with the small block dyno mule. Now I know several of you are thinking, well, wait a minute, what about that big block you were showing before? Well, there's really two projects that kind of go ongoing, and one of them was the big block dyno mule that we did last week for dynoing for 3 days. Only one of the videos has come out about it, and I haven't talked about any of the other stuff because I'm still compiling the book, and you can pre-order that book, the big block dyno mule, and that has complete everything. You can pre-order it on my website, wengines.com. You'll find a link there where you can purchase that book and get all that information before the videos even come out. I'm going to try to have them ready to ship by the end of Friday, hopefully. If you want to know about the small block dyno mule, their books are also there on the website, and you can see what I'm talking about. We're about to make a bunch of changes on that small block dyno mule, and that's what this all is about. We'll get to talk about some of the pretty big changes that go with that. But anyway, in case you want to recap all that, you can. For those that aren't familiar, it's just a 406 small block Chevy 11.2 compression ratio. And before it had AFR and forcer heads completely stock. Now, these parts are going to make up a lot of the changes that are going on. So let me kind of dive into it. First off, one of the things that's getting changed is these Pro Max heads. These are the Project X 215cc heads. And they're very close to what 220 or AFR or 210 AFR. They're right in that range. They're similar, maybe even a copy of those. They flow about 300 CFM. I flowed a whole set, all 8 ports, and I can tell you they do vary. Some of the low ones went like 294, and the high ones went 306. It's still the highest flowing ASCAST head for a small block Chevy 23 degree head I've had on my bench, which is really good. So that's going to be tested first, but then things are getting switched to this one. Now, this one I've only in passing have mentioned. This head is extremely special to me, and because of a huge deal. What happened was Promax is like, you know what? They sent me this head, and they're like, can you port one, and maybe we'll make a CNC program for it? And I said, absolutely. So what I did is they sent me a head, and I ported one. So I cut it to a larger intake valve. I did all my port work with it and sent it off to them. And then they copied it, and it became this one, which they're going to start selling on their website. Now, before you get your hopes up that I'm making a ton of money off this head, nope, I only got paid for the initial development, so I get no royalties or nothing like that. But I am going to start carrying this head in stock just so I can help myself with some of the time and the wait times for people to get heads. This head is pretty good. It's very good, but there's some things that Promax wanted done that I will probably do different, and I'll explain some of that. So what this head is, I ported this one. It's now 235cc runner. And its pinch went from, I think this was stock is 2.3. This is 2.59 for the minimum cross section, which I'll flip around and show you in a minute. Has a 210 intake valve, 1.600 compared to the 208 1.600. It flows, and I gave them the most conservative numbers I possibly could because I didn't want them to ever have someone flow this head and say it flows worse than what it was claimed, because usually their numbers from what I could see from their website, usually are a little bit higher. So I told them it flows 322, which you're like, that's not very much for a 235cc runner. In all fairness, if I flow it with a clay radius entry and like others, it can go about 327. Sometimes it'll hit 330. So, but I told them, put 322, 324. I know it looks worse when you do it that way, but at least I know when they take it to some other bench, it's probably gonna go higher. I'm gonna be quite honest with you, and that's from the Science bench. When I flow it on the Superflow, this thing's really close to 330. But I didn't want them to publish that because that's not going to be what you would expect from others. Point is, it's a really good head. It still does not take shaft rockers, so it's stud mount, 235cc runner. These are right now at 64cc, so this is actually the very first one that's come off the CNC machine. And I had them, because the prototype was 70cc chambers. You might say, why? Well, to do it, and this might sound a little confusing, bear with me. So when I first did it, what I did is I did the valve job and I sank it down. And this is something different from what they wanted from what I would have done. I would have done a 50-degree intake valve job and exhaust. They wanted 45 because that's common what people like, and they just for durability, which I totally get, but also make the flow numbers look a little worse. But I did it. But anyway, I dropped the valve job down, sinking it down pretty good to make the chamber larger, so whenever the CNC machine went to cut, it would get it, because these are really perfectly shaped. So when you sink the valve job in, I can get the lines to come in, because people kind of complain about not seeing all the CNC lines, which I get, and you can tell there's a shadow there. But usually they kind of blend it in, like this one's been blended in somewhere there. You can see it's blended. Now, unfortunately, they captured one of my flaws when I did this, and you can kind of see it. See that right there and there? There's a little skip. I didn't think it was that big. I thought I blended it well, but evidently it picked it up. So it's not bad. Like I said, I floated exactly the way it is. And this valve job that's on it, I gave them the valve job to use, which is the one I use, is a 45-degree, because that's what they wanted. But this is their own 45-degree valve job. So flowing it like this is actually worse than flowing it with my valve job. So I'm confident this thing will move much more air when I redo the valve job myself. But anyway, that's their valve job, and mine will come out further, so it's not so much of a ridge there. I'm very disappointed in myself for doing that. There's only a couple flaws I find in this when I'm looking at judging my own stuff. I know some of you think you don't ever judge your stuff harsh. Oh, but I do. That bothers me because I could have made that better. And there's another spot that I know I didn't do. Right here in this vein, right here, there's another ledge right there. And I know that wasn't in the prototype. There's no way. So that one I'm kind of bummed out about. But anyway, and I'll show you this intake ports. Here are the intake ports. Look beautiful. That's a good job to me. I think I did great. So the majority of this is fine. There's also my third flaw is right through here. There's another weird transition, like it goes up, down, up. I thought that maybe they'd smooth that line, but that's me leaving that in there. I guess I didn't feel that well enough when I was doing it, but it's there. Oddly enough, the AFR 227s has something similar too. But yeah, so 3 mistakes in here I wish I could fix. I'd just take a little bit on the chamber here. Just take a little bit to blend that out. That is definitely not me. I don't know where that came from. And then through there, which it's really not that big a deal. I mean, you can tell this thing's nice. It's nice. I'm just being critical of myself, and you can see it. I can see it. It's weird that it wasn't. I'm not even sure that was in the prototype. But I know this one was, but it wasn't that bad. This like the CNC machine made it worse. The other weird part, and I know I'm probably blabbing and you guys don't want to hear, but the throat is different. I can't explain this. I usually leave, this is giving away a trade secret, I usually leave more of the area on this side than I do this one, but it felt like it got reversed. So it's like more area here than here. So that's weird. But anyway, I'm going to start carrying these in stock so it'd save me some time on some of my port work, because it's really good. When you order them from me, the difference from that and Pro Max is I'm going to redo the valve job and I'm going to put a 50-degree on it. It's going to move more air, make more power. I am going to test that, by the way, on the Dyno Mule. I'm going to do them like they are and then test them with my valve job and some little tweaks. I mean, very, very minor. It's something like I'd sell. But anyway, this had 235 cc's. The exhaust, by the way, is really good. 240-something cc's. Let me show you. Not cc's, but CFM. Really great. I mean, they're beautiful. That was great work, and it's kind of hard too because it's really thin through here. So I didn't even, if you see a shadow through this side on the inside ones, it's because it's trying to break through. So I didn't even touch it. I left it as cast there. But anyway, this thing should be really good for the Dyno Mule. Makes a pretty good power. I hope anyway. I don't know why it wouldn't. But this one, this is very, like I said, very special to me. But you can order it right now if you want to email me. I'll take an order. It's a little bit delayed. This is the very first one to ever come off. But anyway, you can order them from me. If you order them from me, I'll give you two options. You can have me redo the valve jobs, make it a little bit better, and it costs a little bit more, or you can get them like they are. But this is getting tested on Dyno Mule. So, because it's important for Pro Max to know how much did the as-cast head, now how much does the CNC head make, and that will be a very good, interesting one. So that's cool. Now also, AFR sent me this head. This is the AFR 227 competition head, part number 1121. and I flowed it as well. It's up on the bench there. It's really, really nice. And I picked this one because I wanted to kind of see how it compared to this, but also the reason for this head is I wanted to port this one and see if I couldn't get even more power out of the Dyno Mule. And let me explain. This head, although it's smaller theoretically than this one, it's 200, this is 235, this is 227. This one has a move center line. So this is standard valve spacing, which means you don't have to run anything kind of special at all. This one, it's got 40-60 spacing. Looks like they left the bag in there. Oh, never mind. So what that means by that is, or 60-40 spacing. This intake valve moves over 60 thousandths and the exhaust valves moved over 40. So from compared to where this valve is, think about moving it over 60 thousandths and this one moved over 40 thousandths. So obviously it unshrouds the valve more because it's away from the bore line. You could also run bigger valves. Now flowing it, just to give you an idea, this one also has a 65 cc chamber. And I know some of you are thinking, well, that's not a good comparison. You're going to try to compare this to this. You're just trying to make yourself look good. You got a bigger runner. Now, there's actually a reason why I did this. The 227 competition actually flows really close to the 235 cc competition head. But here's the exception. The 235 has a 70 cc chamber. This is 65 cc chamber. Mine's 64. You can get them bigger, by the way, in mine. But it wouldn't be fair to throw a 235 AFR on there and make less power, not because so much even because of the flow or everything else, it's because it lost quite a bit of compression because of the chamber size. So this one flows really, really close to it. Its chamber size is closer to mine, so it should be somewhat of a fairer comparison. However, the price difference is huge. But also the other reason for it, and this is the major one, is I want to port this head and see what I can actually get out of it, because this head has more potential than mine and then this Pro Max. And there's a really easy reason for it. The valve spacing, so I can run a bigger valve, is a huge deal. That's very big. Also, I'm going to try to cut these slots out, maybe weld it and make the push rod slot itself bigger. That's just something, and I could obviously do this with this one as well, but I can't make the valve any larger without getting into the exhaust on this. So your valve's a limiting factor on this one. It is not on that. So there's what it is. How does it compare on the bench, in case you're wondering how these two compare? This one really is better because of the moved over center line. This one flows quite a bit of air, and way more air. Like this one does like 255 or 4 at CFM at 400, and this one does almost 260. So it's about 6 CFM better at 400, the AFR is. But about 500 it switches, and then this one actually outflows it. From 500 they're tied, 600 on, that's better. So that'd be an interesting topic too when we discuss it, which one makes more power, having high lift flow or low lift flow. We'll see, but there's other factors obviously involved. So there's that. Then there's this. So one of the things I also want to test, and yes, I know Engine Masters did it, I wanted to test a Dominator versus a 4150 carburetor when they're flowing about the same. You'll remember my D-Min's about 1,000 CFM. This is a 1050 Holley Sportsman, and I bought this, and I know some of you are like, oh man, why'd you get this? Why didn't you have one of your custom carb guys do it, like Mark or even Velocity Carbs? Well, it's cheaper. And I know you're like, well, I hate when people just buy off price, but I'm not so certain this thing's even gonna work. And eventually I'll probably get sent off anyway. But I actually wanted this exact carburetor for a couple reasons. In case you're wondering what's the difference between the Sportsman and say your regular one, because if we go to a shop of disaster, if we go to these, there is some differences. So these ones are actually the Gen 3 Dominators, and they got all the cool stuff. So what's the difference really between those? I mean, why is this one $1,050 I think retail, and the other one's $1,300? And it wasn't until I got this that I kind of figured out some of it. So I'll go through some of the features with you real quick, give you some bonus knowledge. One, the other one has these holes here, and that's for that idle air, where there's a screw down here so you can adjust the air that comes through, so it helps with the idle. This doesn't have it. That's one. These boosters are cast, even though they're annular. They're not, you can see all some of the holes. They're not billet like the other one, so that's different. The other thing is this side. Yeah, of course I've got it blocked. Give me a second here. You see that arm rod here? Here's what the arm rod looks like on the other one. There. This is an adjustable piece. on the more expensive one, and it's not on this one. So what that means is, and I actually had to adjust this because it doesn't always open the back throttle blades all the way. So I did adjust this. So that's different too. Beyond that, oh, and the fuel bowls, that was a huge difference. These are regular fuel bowls, although they're all shiny and stuff. They're not the XP fuel bowls. So you've got a sight glass on one side. You do not have it on the other side. There's also on the other carburetor, there's a plug here so you can feed from both directions. You can on this. Other than that, I haven't taken off the metering blocks to see, but I think they're billet and about the same. Other than that, that's about it. But what I am going to test with this is, the other thing is, since these are the regular fuel bowls, they don't take the same fuel fittings as the other ones. The other ones have the O-ring fitting, which I prefer over this. This is just a regular where you got that little gasket thing. It sucks. So that's kind of a disadvantage of this bowl. It doesn't really matter for what I'm doing. By the way, this one's a 1052 circuit. That's why you're like, you're missing some bleeds. Yeah, I didn't want a 3 circuit. I just don't. They can be kind of troubling tuning the curve. To me, these are just easier. So the reason for getting it though is a bunch. One, test the 4150 versus the 4500. But the other reason is so I can use this manifold here and to see if it actually makes much of a difference. And this right here is the actual bigger reason. One of the things I'm going to eventually test, but it might take a little bit, is this. This right here, in case you're wondering what this is for a TPS. Let me show you. This is a TPS, throttle position sensor. That's why you have those 2 screws. That's meant to go here. And the reason for having this, and this is important, is because one of the tests I eventually want to do is I want to have a throttle position sensor on here. And what I want to do is I'm going to have this manifold, which I'll show you in a minute, drilled and then welded in actual injector bungs. So I'll have fuel injection on it. And what I want to try to do, and I've been wanting to see, no, I haven't seen anybody do it. Maybe someone has. I haven't found it or hasn't been popped up to me. But what I want to try to do is run a fuel injection and carburetor at the same time. And what I mean by this is I'm going to lean this out dramatically. And then I will use the injectors to kind of fill in that void. So this way you have the carburetor should be cooling the intake track, and then the fuel injection giving the exact amount of air fuel to each cylinder. In my mind, it should be the best of both worlds. It could be a dud, and a very expensive dud to try, but we'll see. You have to have the throttle position sensor for this because the computer needs to see if you're wide open or not, hence this. So they do make throttle bodies that already have that in here, but I wanted the carburetor to obviously do what it does. So in other words, I'll be running 2 systems. I don't know. This might take a whole year before I even get this accomplished because contrary to popular belief, fuel injection is very expensive. It is not cheaper than this thing. I'll go ahead and tell you my retail on this was not my retail. What I paid for this was $922 from my vendor. There are no fuel injection kits, period, out there from Holley that are $922 complete. None. You're like, no, the Sniper's way more than that. They're like $1,050 now. I mean, that's not even the big 4,500 deal. So they are not cheaper. So especially doing the multi-port like what I'll be doing, shoot, I bet you I'm gonna be into that $6,000 just in the EFI stuff. So that's way down. If Hollywood sponsor all that, shoot, maybe we'd have it going already. We'd be good to go. So if someone can reach out to Holley, we'll do the test way faster. Now, back to the one more reason for this is Edelbrock was nice enough to send me this intake. This is the Edelbrock 2970. It's a Super Victor just for Dominator. Now, if you notice, and this is a huge reason for this one, this has the cloverleaf. If you watched one of my earlier videos, I'd said I wanted to test the cloverleaf design with and without. And you're like, well, didn't you do that on the AFR? Yes. The AFR had a cloverleaf, but it was a 4150. It was not this one. This one for the Dominator is a far more common to see. I've seen this in far more intakes than I have on a 4150 style. So removing this is actually the test I wanted to see. And I made a video probably more than a year and a half ago asking Richard if he wouldn't mind doing something like this, but you know, might as well just do it myself. So that's the reason for this intake itself. And then obviously I'm gonna port it and we'll see how that compares, and then fuel injector bungs and cool carburetor. But anyway, that pretty much sums up what's going on with the Dyno Mule as far as the small block one is concerned. However, unlike the big block, I'm not gonna try to do this in 3 days. So one, we're getting ready to get into the hotter part of the summer. And I don't know if you've ever been in a dyno room when it's hot, but it's miserable. So changing heads and stuff, it can be pretty brutal. So I'll do a session where I just do this one, a couple different intakes, and then I'll switch and do that one, a couple different intakes. I still need buy shaft rockers for that one and a couple different intakes. Now, I do want to point this out too. One of the people commented, said they have the Chris Uracro Hulk 23, which is a Dominator intake, much taller, which I think would be fantastic. Although I think Chris is like, no, don't you dare test that. Please don't. It's going to look like a piece of crap when you're crap. Because it may. Because until we get to these two heads, which I can tell you right now on the dyno, this is probably only going to make 640. You're like, what a turd. You don't know how to port heads. Yeah, that dyno's tight. If I took it somewhere else, it'd be in the 700s. But anyway, even at that, it's not going to be turning 8,000 RPM like that Hulk 23 probably wants to do. But we'll see how it does if that person actually sends it in. It's definitely designed more for a higher RPM deal than what we're doing. But it'll be an interesting test. And eventually, we'll get to turn more RPMs. Also, one of the other viewers said they're going to send in a tunnel ram. And as you know, I'm having my second carburetor built. So then we can do some tunnel ram testing, because it'd be cool to see this combo versus a tunnel ram combo. Obviously on some good heads too. So anyway, that's what's going on. Longer video. Sorry about that. Got a lot to say, but you guys take care.